Nobody teaches you the real rules. Not your parents. Not your teachers. Not your mentors. Because the most important rules in life, the ones that actually determine how people treat you, how opportunities flow, how respect is given or withheld, are never spoken out loud. These rules exist in the invisible architecture of every interaction you've ever had. Every conversation, every meeting, every relationship, every negotiation. You've been following them your entire life, or being punished for breaking them, without ever realizing they existed. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts before they say a single word? And other people walk into the same room and nothing changes? Or worse, the energy drops? That's not magic. That's a rule being followed, or broken. Society tells you a story. A comforting story. A story that makes the world feel predictable and fair. The story says, hard work gets rewarded. Honesty always wins. Everyone is treated equally. Good people finish first. The truth speaks for itself. But watch carefully. Watch really carefully. And you'll notice something else entirely. There are silent rules operating beneath every social interaction. Rules about power, about attention, about respect, about status, about value. These rules are not written in any book. They are not taught in any school. They are not acknowledged in polite conversation. And here's the part that makes it even more fascinating. Even the people following these rules often pretend they don't exist. Because admitting they know the rules would mean admitting the game is real. So the game continues. Invisible, unspoken, undeniable. Today, I'm going to make these rules visible. Not so you can manipulate people. Not so you can become cold or calculating. But so you can finally understand what's actually happening and stop feeling confused by outcomes that never seem to match your effort. This is the first rule for a reason. It is the foundation that everything else builds upon. People trust certainty far more than they trust accuracy. This is not a flaw in human nature. It is a survival mechanism that has been hardwired into every human brain for hundreds of thousands of years. Let me explain what this means in practice. Two people are standing in a room. Someone asks a difficult question. The first person hesitates. They consider. They qualify. They say, well, it depends on several factors, but I think perhaps the answer might be around. They are being accurate. They are being honest. They are being responsible. And the room slowly stops listening. The second person speaks calmly and firmly. They say, the answer is this. Here's why. They might be slightly less accurate. They might be simplifying. They might be leaving out nuance. But the room leans in. People nod. People remember. People trust. Because hesitation signals uncertainty. And uncertainty, from an evolutionary perspective, signals danger. The human brain has been trained for hundreds of thousands of years to follow the person who seems to know where they're going, because in the ancestral environment, hesitation meant death. Let me take this deeper. Certainty is not about being right. Certainty is about being decisive. The person who can make a decision with conviction, even if it's imperfect, will always be trusted more than the person who waits for perfect information that never arrives. This is why confidence often beats competence in social settings. Not because people are stupid, but because confidence signals something that competence alone does not: direction. Think about it this way. If you're lost in a forest and two people offer to guide you out, one who says, I'm 90% sure the path is this way, but I could be wrong, and another who says, this is the way, follow me. Which one are you more likely to follow? The second one. Every time. Even if the first one has a better map. Because in moments of uncertainty, humans don't need perfect information. They need someone to reduce the uncertainty. That's what leadership is. That's what influence is. That's what this rule is about. So what does this mean for you? It means that if you want to be heard, you must learn to speak with conviction. Not arrogance, conviction. There's a difference. Arrogance says, I am right and anyone who disagrees is wrong. Conviction says, based on what I know, this is my position. Here's why I believe it. Arrogance closes doors. Conviction opens them. The person who qualifies every statement, who apologizes before speaking, who uses, I think, and maybe, and perhaps, and I'm not sure but, that person is signaling to the room that their words don't need to be taken seriously. The person who speaks clearly, calmly, and directly, even when acknowledging uncertainty, commands attention. The principle is this: certainty attracts. Uncertainty repels. This is not moral. This is not fair. This is simply how human attention works. The second silent rule is perhaps the most observable once you know what to look for. People look at how others treat you before deciding how they will treat you. This happens automatically, instinctively, often unconsciously. But it happens in every social environment, every single time. Here's how it works. Imagine you walk into a room where you don't know anyone. You're standing alone. No one acknowledges you. No one looks at you. No one adjusts their behavior because of your presence. In this room, you have no status. Not because of anything you've done wrong, but because no one has signaled that you matter. Now imagine the same room. But this time, someone important walks in with you. They introduce you. They shake your hand. They speak to you with respect. Watch what happens. Even without knowing anything about you, even without a single data point about your competence or character, people in that room will begin treating you differently. They will make eye contact. They will remember your name. They will defer slightly. They will mirror the respect they just witnessed. This is not shallow behavior. This is social efficiency. The human brain processes enormous amounts of social information every second. To survive in complex groups, our ancestors needed shortcuts. One of those shortcuts was, watch how others treat someone and use that as a guide for how you should treat them. If someone is respected by the group, it's efficient to respect them too. If someone is dismissed by the group, questioning that dismissal requires energy the brain would rather conserve. This is why first impressions matter more than almost anything else. Because the first moment of interaction sets a status anchor that everything else builds upon. Here's the part that most people miss. Status is contagious. But it's contagious in a specific direction. Respect spreads outward from the top. If one high-status person treats you well, everyone who observes that moment adjusts their perception of you upward. Not because they have evidence of your worth, but because they trust the judgment of the person who just signaled to them. Conversely, if someone treats you poorly in public and no one corrects it, that disrespect also spreads. Others see it. Others note it. Others begin treating you the same way. This is why how you allow yourself to be treated in the first few moments of any interaction is so critical. Because those moments set a pattern that others will follow. What this means for you. First, understand that you cannot control how every person treats you. But you can control who you associate with. And you can control which rooms you enter. If you spend time with people who dismiss you, diminish you, or ignore you, their perception of you will infect how others see you, including people who haven't met you yet. If you spend time with people who respect you, value you, and treat you with dignity, that respect will precede you into rooms you haven't entered yet. Second, when you enter a new environment, do not try to prove your worth through words. Words are cheap. Instead, let the room see who respects you. Let the room see how you carry yourself. Let the room see that you are comfortable in your own presence. Status is not demanded. Status is demonstrated. And it is confirmed by the reactions of others. The third silent rule is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology, and one of the most exploited. Attention changes perceived importance. When something receives attention, people assume it must be valuable. When something is ignored, people assume it must be unimportant. This seems obvious when stated directly. But its implications are profound, and most people never fully grasp how this rule operates in their daily lives. Let me give you a concrete example. Two identical products sit on a shelf. One is displayed prominently. The other is hidden. Which one do people assume is better? The one they see. Not because they've evaluated it. Not because they've compared features. But because visible equals valuable in the human perceptual system. This same principle applies to people. The person who is always available, always responding, always showing up, always eager to participate, begins to be taken for granted. Their presence loses significance because it is constant. The person who is occasionally present, who brings value when they arrive but doesn't overstay their welcome, that person's presence feels significant. Because it is not guaranteed. This is where the principle of scarcity intersects with attention. The human brain assigns more value to things that are rare, difficult to obtain, or not always available. This is not a cultural preference. It is a biological response rooted in evolutionary survival. If something is abundant, it has low survival value. If something is scarce, it has high survival value. Attention follows the same logic. The person who always responds instantly, who always says yes, who always makes themselves available, they signal to the brain. This person's attention has low value because it is always accessible. The person who is selective with their time, their energy, their presence, they signal. This person's attention has high value because it is not guaranteed. This is why silence feels powerful. Why people who speak less often carry more weight when they do speak. Why people who aren't desperate for approval seem more attractive. Why the person who can sit comfortably in their own presence without needing to fill every silence commands more respect than the one who talks endlessly. Restraint signals that you have options. It signals that your attention is a resource, not something to be given away freely, but something to be invested wisely. What does this mean for your life? It means you must learn to be selective with your attention. Not cold, not distant, not withholding for the sake of manipulation, but intentional. When you speak, speak because you have something to say, not because you need to fill silence. When you give your time, give it fully, but only when it is truly yours to give. When you engage, engage completely, but know when to withdraw. The person who is available to everyone is valued by no one. The person who is available to the right people at the right times, for the right reasons, that person's presence becomes something others seek. Because attention, like any resource, derives its value from how it is allocated. The fourth silent rule operates beneath the level of conscious awareness, and yet it shapes every single interaction you will ever have. Emotional states are contagious. They spread from person to person like a frequency that bypasses logic and enters directly through the nervous system. You have experienced this. Everyone has. You walk into a room where two people are arguing. Before anyone says a word to you, you feel it. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing changes. Your stomach tenses. The tension has entered your body before your conscious mind has even processed what is happening. Or you walk into a room where someone is calm, grounded, and centered. You feel yourself settle. Your breathing deepens. Your shoulders drop. The calmness transfers to you without a single word being exchanged. This is not spiritual. This is biological. Humans are equipped with mirror neurons, brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that action. These neurons allow us to literally feel what others are feeling. It is the biological basis of empathy. And it operates automatically, without conscious control. Here is where this becomes a rule of power. The person who can regulate their emotional state, who can remain calm when others are anxious, steady when others are reactive, grounded when others are panicking, that person automatically becomes an anchor in any social environment. Because humans seek emotional regulation from those around them. When we feel anxious, we look for someone who is calm. When we feel uncertain, we look for someone who is steady. When we feel out of control, we gravitate towards someone who seems in control. This is why emotional control creates authority automatically. Not because the calm person says they are in charge, but because everyone else's nervous system starts orienting toward them as a source of stability. The inverse is also true. The person who brings anxiety into a room, who is easily flustered, who reacts emotionally, who cannot regulate their own state, that person loses authority even if they have the title, the position, or the credentials. Because no one wants to follow someone who is visibly unsteady. Think about it. If a crisis is unfolding and one person is panicking while another is calm, who do you instinctively want to follow? The panicking person may have more accurate information. The calm person may know less. But you will follow the calm person every time. Because your nervous system demands stability before it can process anything else. What this means for you. Your emotional state is not just your private experience. It is a signal you are broadcasting to everyone around you, whether you know it or not. If you want to be perceived as someone with authority, you must learn to regulate your nervous system. Not suppress your emotions. Not pretend you don't feel things. But develop the capacity to return to center when you are knocked off balance. This is a skill. It can be trained. It is developed through practice, self-awareness, and the willingness to sit with discomfort without immediately reacting to it. The person who can remain calm in a storm will be obeyed. The person who panics will be ignored. That is the rule. That is how it has always worked. That is how it will always work. The fifth silent rule might be the most uncomfortable to acknowledge, because it reveals something about human nature that polite society prefers to ignore. People test boundaries constantly. Not always intentionally. Not always maliciously. Often unconsciously. But regularly, consistently, and predictably. These tests take many forms. Interruptions during conversation. Dismissive jokes disguised as humor. Small requests that slowly become demands. Subtle disrespect that is just ambiguous enough to deny. Delays in responding to you that wouldn't be delays for others. Conversations that steer away from what you want to discuss. Each of these is a probe. A way of asking without words, how much can I take? What will you allow? Where's your line? This is not because people are bad. It is because boundaries are invisible. They cannot be seen. They can only be felt when they are encountered. And every human being, in every social interaction, is trying to understand the invisible architecture of the person in front of them. They are trying to learn where your edges are. What you will tolerate. What you will push back against. What commands your respect, and what earns your dismissal. These tests are how we teach each other. The problem is that most people fail these tests without ever knowing they were being tested. They tolerate the small disrespect. They laugh at the dismissive joke. They let the interruption slide. They accommodate the overstep. And in doing so, they teach the other person. This is acceptable. You can go further. Here's what happens next. When a boundary is tested and no resistance is met, the testing escalates. Not because the other person is calculating or manipulative, but because they have learned that there is more room than they initially assumed. And human nature, like nature itself, expands to fill available space. This is why small things matter. The interruption you let slide today becomes the dismissal you endure tomorrow. The joke you laughed at this week becomes the disrespect you suffer next month. The boundary you failed to set in a small moment becomes a pattern of behavior that takes enormous effort to break later. What this means for you. You must learn to set boundaries early, calmly, and consistently. Not with aggression. Not with anger. But with presence. When someone interrupts you, pause. Look at them. Let the silence hold. Then continue as if they hadn't spoken. When someone makes a dismissive joke at your expense, don't laugh. Hold your face neutral. Let the discomfort sit in the space between you. When someone oversteps, say something. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It can be as simple as, "I'd prefer if we didn't do that." The key is consistency, not intensity. You don't need to be loud. You need to be unyielding. The person who calmly and consistently holds their boundaries will be respected. The person who explodes occasionally but tolerates continuously will be tested repeatedly. People respect what is clearly defined. They are confused by what is inconsistently enforced. The sixth silent rule is perhaps the most counterintuitive and the most difficult to accept. The more desperate you seem for someone's approval, attention, or validation, the less respect you receive. This seems backwards. Shouldn't people appreciate being valued? Shouldn't loyalty and devotion earn respect? In theory. In practice, no. Because the human brain does not evaluate value through a logical accounting system. It evaluates value through a perceived desirability system, and desirability is fundamentally linked to scarcity and independence. Here's how it works. When you make it clear that someone's opinion of you matters more to you than your own opinion of yourself, you are signaling that your value is dependent on their approval. And dependence, in any form, decreases perceived value. Think about it in economic terms. An asset that is completely dependent on one buyer for its value is a risky asset. An asset that has independent value, that is valuable regardless of who owns it, is a secure asset. People are drawn to secure assets. People are wary of risky assets. This creates a paradox that most people never resolve. The more you show you want something, the harder it becomes to get. The more you demonstrate that someone's approval matters to you, the less likely they are to give it freely. The more you try to hold on to someone, the more they feel the pressure of being held and the more they want to escape. This is not because people are cruel. It is because the human brain is wired to value what is freely given more than what is desperately pursued. When something is freely given, it feels like a gift. When something is aggressively pursued, it feels like an obligation. And no one respects an obligation the way they respect a gift. The solution to this paradox is not to pretend you don't care. That is manipulation, and manipulation is eventually discovered. The solution is to genuinely not need what you want. This is the emotional independence that commands respect. When you want something but don't need it, when you desire connection but are complete without it, when you value someone's presence but are not diminished by their absence, you become someone worth valuing. Because you have demonstrated the most attractive quality a human can possess. You are enough. What this means for your life. Stop overfunctioning in relationships. Stop trying to earn what should be freely given. Stop chasing people who are walking away. Stop over-explaining yourself to people who aren't listening. The moment you stop needing someone to validate you is the moment you become someone worth validating. This is not about playing games. This is about knowing your own worth so deeply that you don't need anyone else to confirm it. When you have that, when your sense of value comes from within rather than from the reactions of others, you will find that others inexplicably begin treating you with more respect. Because respect, like attention, flows toward what is self-sustaining, and away from what is dependent. The seventh and final silent rule is the one that operates at the deepest level, and the one that most people are least aware of. Before people process the content of your words, they process your presence, your posture, your tone, your pace, your breathing, your eye contact, your emotional state, the tension or relaxation in your body, the energy you carry into the space. This is processed instantly, automatically, and unconsciously, and it shapes everything that follows. Think about this carefully. Before you say a single word in any interaction, before anyone knows what you think, what you believe, what you have to offer, they have already made dozens of microjudgments about you based entirely on your presence. Are you confident or uncertain? Are you relaxed or tense? Are you open or guarded? Are you warm or cold? Are you present or distracted? Are you comfortable in your own skin or trying to be someone else? These judgments are not intellectual. They are visceral. They happen in the body before the mind can intervene. And here's what matters. Once these initial judgments are made, everything you say is filtered through them. If your presence communicates confidence, your words will be heard as credible, even if they are imperfect. If your presence communicates anxiety, your words will be heard as uncertain, even if they are brilliant. The feeling comes first. Logic comes later. This is why two people can say the exact same words and get completely different responses. The words are the same. The presence is different. Let me break down what presence actually consists of. Posture. How you hold your body communicates how you hold yourself in the world. Collapsed posture says, I don't take up space. Open, grounded posture says, I belong here. Tone. The shape of your voice carries more information than the words you speak. A steady, resonant tone signals stability. A high, rush tone signals anxiety. A flat tone signals disconnection. Pace. How quickly you speak signals how comfortable you are with silence. Rushed speech says, I need to fill space before I lose you. Measured speech says, my words matter. I'll give them time to land. Breathing. Shallow, high chest breathing signals threat response. Deep, belly breathing signals groundedness. And because breathing is contagious, your breath will influence the breath of those around you. Eye contact. The ability to hold someone's gaze without aggression or avoidance signals comfort with yourself and comfort with others. Eyes that dart away signal uncertainty. Eyes that bore in signal intensity. Eyes that are present signal connection. Here's the most important insight about this rule. You can think your way into a different emotional state, but it's much easier and more effective to change your body and let your mind follow. If you want to feel confident, don't wait until you believe you are confident. Instead, stand like a confident person. Breathe like a confident person. Speak at the pace of a confident person. Hold your body like you belong in the space. Your nervous system will respond to the physical signal. Your mind will follow. This is why so many people fail at changing how they're perceived. They try to change their thoughts first. They try to convince themselves they are worthy. They try to think their way into confidence. Meanwhile, their body is still communicating uncertainty. And the body is what others are reading. What this means for you. Before you enter any important interaction, a meeting, a conversation, a presentation, a difficult discussion, take 60 seconds to reset your physical state. Stand up straight. Roll your shoulders back. Take 3 deep breaths into your belly. Slow down your internal pace. Drop your voice to a comfortable register. Let your face relax. This is not performance. This is preparation. You are not pretending to be someone else. You are clearing away the physical tension that prevents your true self from showing up. Because the person people respond to is not the person you think you are, it is the person you are in the moment they encounter you. Make that person someone worth responding to. Here's the uncomfortable truth that ties all of these rules together. Most social rules are never discussed openly, because society survives by pretending they don't exist. We tell ourselves a story about how the world works. A clean story. A fair story. A story where merit is rewarded, where honesty wins, where being good is enough. But beneath that story, the silent rules are always operating. And the people who understand them, who see them, who work with them, who respect them, those people move through life with a clarity that others don't have. Not because they are manipulative. Not because they are cold. Not because they have abandoned their values. But because they have stopped being confused. The silent rules don't replace kindness. They don't replace integrity. They don't replace genuine connection. They provide the context in which kindness, integrity, and connection can actually land. You can be the most genuinely good person in the world. But if you are uncertain, desperate, unaware of your presence, unable to hold a boundary, emotionally reactive, and always available, your goodness will be overlooked. Not because people are evil, but because they are processing you through these silent rules before they ever get to your content. This is not a reason to be cynical. This is a reason to be competent. Understanding the rules of the game doesn't mean you have to play dirty. It means you can play effectively while staying true to who you are. The best people, the most genuine, the most authentic, the most impactful, are often the ones who understand the silent rules better than anyone. They just don't talk about them. When you see these patterns, something fundamental shifts. You stop taking things personally when they were never personal to begin with. You stop chasing approval from people who are incapable of giving it. You stop exhausting yourself trying to earn what should be freely exchanged. And you start seeing what is actually happening in your interactions, instead of being confused by the gap between what people say and what they do. Awareness of the silent rules doesn't make you manipulative. It makes you awake. You begin to notice the person who interrupts and how the room accommodates them. The person who stays calm and how the room orients toward them. The person who never over-explains and how their words carry weight. The person who sets boundaries quietly and how others respect them. The person whose presence shifts the energy of a room before they speak. These people are not special. They are not born with some gift you don't have. They have simply learned, consciously or unconsciously, to operate in alignment with the rules that are always running beneath the surface. And here's the good news. Once you see the rules, you can work with them. You don't have to be a victim of social dynamics anymore. You don't have to wonder why your efforts don't produce the results you expect. You don't have to feel invisible when you have so much to offer. You simply have to learn to be present, to be regulated, to be intentional with your attention, to hold your boundaries, to trust your own value without needing others to confirm it. These are skills. They can be learned. They can be practiced. They can be mastered. Let me be clear about what I am not saying. I am not saying you should manipulate people. I am not saying you should be cold, distant, or calculating. I am not saying you should abandon authenticity in favor of strategy. What I am saying is this. Authenticity without awareness is just chaos. You can be the most genuine person in the world, but if you are unaware of how you are being received, your authenticity will be wasted on people who cannot see it. The goal is not to become a different person. The goal is to become a clearer version of yourself. Here are the key takeaways to implement. Observe more. Before you react to any situation, take a moment to see what is actually happening. Who has the attention? Who is setting the tone? What is the energy in the room? The more you see, the less you will be confused. React less. Most social mistakes come from reacting before you have enough information. The pause between stimulus and response is where your power lives. Lengthen that pause. Control your attention. Don't give your focus to everything that demands it. Give your focus to what deserves it. Your attention is your most valuable resource. Invest it wisely. Regulate your state. Before important interactions, reset your body. Breathe. From center. Your emotional state is the foundation of everything you communicate. Set boundaries early. The boundaries you don't set in the beginning will have to be fought for later. Small, early, consistent boundaries prevent large, costly conflicts down the road. Stop over-explaining. If you explain yourself,